start off part 2, we have quite an earache of an episode with Slide Whistle Stooges. Trust me when I say you will wish you have never heard of this episode. Get it? Never heard of it. It's an earache. Get it? Well, part 2 is going great. The episode starts with Squidward doing meaningless tests while a slide whistle plays in the background. To nobody's surprise, SpongeBob and Patrick are the ones playing the slide whistle, and of course, when asked to stop, they keep going with this unfunny joke for a few more minutes. After what feels like an hour, Squidward tries to show them up by playing the slide whistle annoyingly, but just ends up joining their dumb little game instead. And Squidward, I guess, takes it too far by impersonating a baby, somehow hijacks a gasoline truck, which goes off a cliff and explodes. Wait, anyway, he ends up in the hospital where, yes, impersonating a baby, somehow, definitely deserves a full body cast and exploding and not being able to talk and shouldn't be able to breathe. But causing somebody to do all this, not to mention making fun of the sick and dying, completely fine. Yeah, this episode really stinks. Whether it's the reliance on one very unfunny joke or its infuriating ending, there's really nothing to like about the episode. And to think, this is only the beginning of part 2. Shuffleboarding! Yet another infamous SpongeBob episode that didn't make it so far, we have shuffleboarding. After SpongeBob and Patrick, let's say, startled Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy, they end up in a fight scene that would make the original episode look like an anime, but at the end of it they end up in full body casts and find out that they had to go to a shuffleboarding tournament that day. So SpongeBob and Patrick donned the deluxe version of the Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy Halloween costume and head off to the shuffleboarding competition.
There's no way we can lose with these costumes on!
We already won the tournament.
Excuse me, but could you play that again, quick?
We already won the tournament.
So are you telling me that they scrapped the original plot of the episode in the middle of the episode? Okay. This looks really bad, but it could work very well if the second plot is better than the original and complements the original.
You're chewing too loud!
Nope! I'm done. At this point, my only question is why? You established a plot that was admittedly kind of good, only to scrap it so you can do something both cliche and horrible. Like, I'm honestly dumbfounded right now. Anyway, after another fight scene that would actually be kind of funny if the person who wins wasn't the bad guy, SpongeBob and Patrick put everybody in Bikini Bottom in jail, and because their disguises were so convincing, the townspeople break out of the jail and chase Mermaid Man Barnacle Boy, while SpongeBob and Patrick, you know, the people who threw the innocents in jail, get off scot-free. Needless to say, if episodes like this didn't make the top 15, I am going to be dead before we even make part 3. Waiting. Now, for the record, when I was scripting good old What's-His-Name, I completely forgot about this episode. With that said, this is without a doubt the most uninspired episode in SpongeBob history. It is so uninspired that I could sum up the plot in 5 seconds. In fact, let me do that right now. SpongeBob orders a toy and it's a butt while he's waiting for the toy, but then he gets the toy.
The end.
If you think I skipped anything, you're wrong. I mean, there's one part where he thinks Patrick broke the toy, and then it's fixed not even a minute later. What was even the purpose of this episode? And before somebody says anything like, oh, it's a 5-minute short, so of course it's not gonna have an elaborate plot. Well, actually, both Smarts and Don't Have Shame are really good episodes, and they were also 5-minute shorts. So this and good old What's-His-Name have no excuse. It's just an incredibly uninspired episode that makes you wonder why it was even made. And it's so uninspired that it has the shortest entry on this list. Now this is going to be a very strange entry on the list, because it's the only tie that's on the list, and the episodes are so similar, you'd swear they're sister episodes or something.
Oh, would you look at this?
Anyway, I'm going to try and make this entry as short as possible because if I went through both these episodes individually, this one entry by itself would be 8 minutes, so let's hope it doesn't get to that time. Anyway, the two episodes are Driven to Tears and Rule of Dumb. Both episodes have to do with something great happening to Patrick and him hurting everybody else with it. In Driven to Tears, Patrick gets a driver's license and rubs it in SpongeBob's face after he fails his driver's test. And in Rule of Dumb, Patrick becomes king and makes life horrible for everybody in Bikini Bottom. Both of these episodes fail because they're both really bad torture episodes, with Driven to Tears being a SpongeBob torture episode and Rule of Dumb being a city torture episode. They happen. And quite honestly, I find both these episodes hard to watch. Mostly Rule of Dumb, though. Driven to Tears' main problem is the treatment towards SpongeBob is a bit too cruel. And Rule of Dumb's problem is that Patrick abusing his power as king and making the lives of every Bikini Bottomite horrible. Not to mention, why are these sister episodes? I mean, this had nothing to do with their ranking on the list, but seriously? Did they make one of these episodes and think, wow, that went really well, and just make another and not save it for a different season? I mean, say what you want about Face Freeze, but at least if it did copy off Hooky, it copied off a good episode. Either way, these are two copycat episodes that are horrible in different ways. I need to think about this for a second. Oh yeah, and that plot twist that Gary's the king at the end.
What a twist!
Okay, now we have one of the most hated SpongeBob episodes ever, and one that gets genuinely creepy at points, Boating Buddies. The episode starts with SpongeBob bothering Squidward because, I'm not kidding here, he was just breathing.
Coffee rain!
It's hot chocolate.
Chocolate rain!
Chocolate rain.
Anyway, Squidward runs into a stop sign, which, at least in the United States, is illegal, but would get you a fine of, at most, $1,000, and at least $25, and would not get your license revoked. Anyway, Squidward does have his license revoked and has to get his license back at boating school. And guess who's there waiting for him? Question, why couldn't he go to a different boating school? Were there not any other classes he could have taken? Why didn't he just go to a DMV?
I have a lot of questions!
And from this point, the episode starts to go from bad to a bit creepy. Whoever did SpongeBob's facial designs deserves to be fired. SpongeBob starts to act very, very stalkerish towards Squidward, and this ensues a lot of moments like this. Anyway, the episode starts to be jerked towards Squidward, and starts to turn a bit weird when they get put in costumes, shrunken, transported, you know, normal driving things. And all of this somehow ends with Squidward in a full body cast, and the cast prevents Squidward from taking the test. Anyway, Squidward fails the test and has to take it the next week. Yeah, I'm starting to see why this episode gets a lot of hate. From the lack of research to the torture towards Squidward and the really creepy imagery during the episode, it's bad. It's really bad. And if you thought this was creepy, well... So here we have one of the big episodes. One of the ones that's on everybody's most hated list and incredibly high at that. The Splinter. Did you like that scene in House Fancy where you saw Squidward's toenail get violently ripped off for 20 seconds? Well, how about we extend the time to 11 minutes? Wouldn't that be just swell? The episode starts with SpongeBob getting ready for work when he gets a spatula stuck on the roof. So of course he stacks things like scissors, swords, and other things I'd guarantee Mr. Krabs wouldn't pay for. And when he does get his spatula off the roof, he gets caught on a sword, which he would either get cut in half or he jammed it in. There's no way he could just hold it up and that would have happened. Just saying. Right when you think that SpongeBob's gonna make it out alright, he gets a splinter jammed in his thumb and we get to see it, hooray. Squidward later hears about the splinter and tells SpongeBob that he'll have to go home if Mr. Krabs sees it, which if you have an injury that's swollen enough to cover a third of your body, you shouldn't be going home, you should be going to a hospital stat. SpongeBob wants to stay at work, so he puts his faith in Patrick to fix his thumb. Patrick's way of making the situation better is by hitting it with a hammer and putting trash on it to make a gross purple-green color. And then SpongeBob shows the splinter to Mr. Krabs, who pulls the splinter out, and yeah, the imagery in this episode is horrifying to say the least. If you took out all of the parts to do with gore, the episode would be more uninspired than waiting. In spoilers, gore is not a good thing to base a kid's show around. And to think, this is the tamest thing on the bottom half. Oh no. So I'm going going to guess that everybody just loved A Pal for Gary because they actually reused that plot. Now, Pet Sitter Pat is kind of like the writer's way of trying to redeem themselves from A Pal for Gary, but making it even worse because they didn't realize what the problem was. SpongeBob gets invited to his grandma's birthday party when he has to find a sitter for Gary, even though he's left Gary alone hours at a time before. I mean, seriously, in A Pal for Gary alone, he gets up and then leaves and then comes home when it's already dark, so it's not like he won't survive for 2 or 3 hours. Anyway, SpongeBob thinks that Patrick's a suitable sitter, even though he does this right before he gets hired, and I'm going to guess that they thought that the only problem with A Pal for Gary was SpongeBob's obliviousness towards Gary's suffering. So, while SpongeBob's gone, he's constantly checking up on Patrick. You didn't fix anything though, because Patrick's still there being oblivious to Gary's suffering, and SpongeBob chiming in every once in a while kind of makes Gary's punishment even more cruel. And let me tell you, they do not hold back on Gary in this episode. One of the only reasons that A Pal for Gary wasn't any higher was Gary came out basically unharmed in the episode. But in this episode, he gets paralyzed, sprayed with a high-pressured hose, almost buried, starved, and somehow not noticed by PETA. Also, the ending makes no sense. When SpongeBob comes home, he finds the house flooded, and he finds Gary reading Patrick a bedtime story. The ending's so stupid that I actually had to look up on the SpongeBob wiki to see if it was the original ending. This is a torture episode that's so bad, it makes A Pal for Gary look good. Think about that for a second. One of the worst things about newer SpongeBob episodes is SpongeBob's love of Squidward during them, which we've already seen backfire in episodes like Boating Buddies. But what if you replace Squidward with a Krabby Patty? Then you would get to love a patty. This episode starts with Squidward working at the Krusty Krab when he makes a Krabby Patty that he falls in love with. Not like, oh my gosh, I just love this food. No, SpongeBob becomes romantically interested in the sandwich and starts taking it on dates, and he sings about it. He takes on a date and Mr. Krabs and Squidward show him that the Krabby Patty's gone rotten, so he eats it. I'm going to guess that was a way to try and gross the audience out, but we're still kind of weirded out because he sang a song about how much he loved a burger. Yeah, this is an episode that is best left in the trash. I think we can all agree that Squidward torture episodes are one of the worst kinds of SpongeBob episodes. Next to the episodes where Patrick's a jerk for no reason. Nobody likes these episodes. They're both really bad in their own ways, but at least an episode will be one or the other, right? They've never made an episode that was both, right? Why? This episode starts with Squidward being happy because he has tickets to his favorite clarinet player. SpongeBob asks if he can see the tickets. SpongeBob realizes the error of his ways and keeps him far away from SpongeBob. But in that moment, Patrick eats the tickets before he even knows what they are. SpongeBob wins tickets on the radio and takes Squidward as his +1. And when they actually get there, Patrick's there for some reason. Did he give the person the ticket he ate? I'm gonna try not to think about that too hard. Patrick eats Squidward's backstage pass for no reason, and then Squidward loses the seats that he was obviously entitled to. They get kicked out, but then sneak in almost 10 seconds later when they find Kelpie G, who wants to play with SpongeBob and says that Squidward's playing is abysmal. Yeah, this episode's a true work of art. And I don't mean like Starry Night work of art, I mean that one guy who drew a circle and then sold it for $1 million. And somehow, I've never seen this on a worst list, but boy, does it deserve to be on every worst list. And to think, it didn't even make it to part 3. But until then, I'm the Osmond Keyblade, and I'll see you guys in the final part of Top 25 Worst SpongeBob SquarePants Episodes. See you then.